Good morning, Boquete. Good morning, Chiriqui. This is Talking with Your Doctor with Dr. Shannon Tour, coming at you live on Radio Chiriqui 103.3. I'd like to thank Roger Guerra. I'd like to thank Bolivar, our engineer, for being here with us today and making the show run smoothly. And I'd also like to thank Veronica down in David. Thanks, Veronica. Good morning. Today was a beautiful day when I got up, nice and shiny and sunny and breezy. And driving over here to the station, I noticed some dark clouds in the area, so I think we're going to be getting some rain kind of early today. So go out and get everything done that you need to early. I'm here today with Jeffrey Flynn. He is a member of the Club Rotario de Boquete, and he's here to talk to us about the Manchichi project that they're doing. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Dr. Tour.
How are you doing
here.
today?
I appreciate the invite. I'm doing very well, thank you.
Great. I'm happy to have you on the show. I've been hearing some good things about the Manchichi project and all the good that you're trying to do. I mean, it's still in development. It's not quite in place yet, correct?
Right. We're on the cusp of launching this. It's been a year's journey of actually putting all the pieces together, and there are a lot of pieces to this.
I guess. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I lived most of my my formative life and professional life in Louisiana,
Okay.
down the bayou, as they say. Now I'm up the Baru. But I grew up in an area and decided to, it's of South Louisiana that is dominated by the oil and gas industry and by sugarcane.
Oh, wow.
And it was led into working in sugarcane. Got an education at Louisiana State University and worked for many years for a private company doing some consulting and healthy seed cane development type work for sugarcane in Louisiana and Texas and Florida, and eventually branched out to doing some consulting in areas including Central America and eventually Panama.
I was going to say, you must feel right at home right here with all the sugarcane around.
Yes, I do, but I'm enjoying being around coffee rather than sugarcane.
That's true. We don't have a whole lot up here in the mountains, but there is some.
Right,
There's a couple
right,
farms
right.
out there.
Little patches, yeah.
So that's what brought you to Panama was the sugarcane, or was it something else?
It was actually sugarcane initially. I was doing some consulting at the sugar mill in Alange.
Okay.
And next thing you know, I discovered the highlands here, Boquete, and fell in love with it. And this was probably 12, 13 years ago that I first started coming up in this area.
Okay. Are you here permanently now, or are you still going back and forth?
Semi-permanently, yes. I spend most, over the last few years and through the pandemic, I've tried to stay mostly here. I have family connections in Louisiana and South Georgia. So I get back for visits when I can.
I hear that accent there. That little bit of an accent came out when you said South Georgia.
Well, my accent is more down the bayou, Sha.
Yeah.
And,
So, You've been a member of the Rotary Club in the States as well as here, or?
No, actually, I was not. I had friends here in the Rotary Club, and I liked some of the things they had been doing. When I was just here, less permanently, just going back and forth, but I was engaging with them with some of their activities involving education, especially with the school kids, and I liked some of the outreach things they were interested in doing with the indigenous population as well. So that kind of keyed my interest into joining up and joining the program just to see what I could get involved with. Little did I know this was on the horizon.
So you were telling me earlier that the word manchichi actually is two words. It means mother and child.
It is exactly.
Okay.
Mom and baby.
Mom and baby.
Manchichi is how they pronounce that.
Oh, and you're learning a little bit of Nobe.
Well, I always have because of gardener and neighbors and things like that. So we like to play around and trade. They're trying to learn English and I'm trying to learn Spanish and Nobe.
And you're throwing in the Nobe with it, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the program and when did it first come to?
Yeah, okay. So that's a good
To
point.
me.
So why this project? How do we get into this? If you look at Rotary, it's an international organization, and they have set up 7 focus areas to concentrate our service and activities in. And amongst other things, education is a big one. Fighting diseases, they're big in vaccinations, polio especially. They're big in water sanitation and building local economies, those kind of things. But one of the big areas also is mother and children. And one of our founding members of this club here, which was started in 2005, I think I've got the year right, is a Dr. Newton Osborne, who is an OBGYN,
Right.
Educated practice. You know him, I'm sure.
I think, yeah, I've met him a few times.
And very active in the U.S. and then moved back. He's a native son here of Chiriquí, and he had the perfect perspective on things because having practiced in different hospitals throughout the U.S. and then coming here, looking at the state of the health of the mothers coming into the women's hospital there.
Obaldía.
Obaldía. The most serious cases were typically indigenous women coming in, and
They still are.
very much emergency. He was seeing, conditions that were so rare to come across in the U.S. Eclampsia, for instance, and
There's
gestational
actually
diabetes.
plenty of it here.
Yeah,
Plenty of it here.
And he recognized that these are conditions that are very preventable if they can be detected at an early stage. So he kind of challenged our club. This was probably 2.5 years ago. Hey, let's see if we can put some attention onto this and figure out some kind of program that we could do to maybe start addressing some of this, or at least make it more visible that this is a serious issue that can be focused on, and so we started looking for ways to try to approach this, and just by good fortune, the universe was working with us. We were able to find this amazing project that had just been recently completed, or at least the first step of the project in 8 communities in the Mayan indigenous region of Guatemala. And there was a non-governmental organization called Phalarope out of Savannah, Georgia, led by a amazing woman, Dr. Miriam Rittmeyer, who had completed this Rotary Global Grant funded project using the resources available in the community, of the traditional midwives who had been, and it's a very parallel situation. And in Guatemala, their maternal mortality, while ours is like 10 times what you'd find in most Western countries, here, theirs was even higher amongst the Mayan population in Guatemala. And
Due to lack of medical control, lack of resources, lack of education, basically.
Basically, what it boiled down to is that if they figured out that if you could have someone monitoring women during their pregnancy, because they were so infrequently, because of living remotely and just not having the education, like you say, but also just the ability to find a clinic that they could get regular screening and testing and evaluations.
Here you might have to walk for days.
Exactly.
Basically to go find a clinic, and there's not always a doctor on duty.
Correct. And so she figured out, well, there's this core of dedicated women, and you find this in every culture in the world. It's been going on for millennial, is women helping women with childbirth and developing this core of women. Here they refer to them as parteras or comodoras, and so she wanted to look at, well, let's see if we can empower, we can provide some diagnostic tools and build up this core of women in these 8 communities that they did on their pilot project, and teach them how to use stethoscopes and teach them how to use sphygmomanometers for checking blood pressure. I mean, all the basic things, blood sugar, even just a thermometer to read what the temperature's doing, or so they did a year-long project, and these midwives, traditional midwives, most of them, fairly middle-aged to older women, some younger, but they were able to pick this stuff up. And the reason they were able to pick it up is because they used Mayan women. It was a train-the-trainer type of situation. They found some Mayan women with some experience and knowledge that, health promoters, as we call them, that understood and could be trained to train the midwives. And that way you have somebody there living in the culture that can week by week work with these women. After a year, 2 things significantly happened in that instance. One is these women picked up the information. They learned how to use all of this equipment for checking on their patients, who were their family and neighbors from the community, and were able to detect when pregnant women were in danger of potentially some high-risk conditions.
Right, and this is just picked up with basic equipment. You don't need anything fancy for that, really.
No, not at all. And each one of them, at the end of this training, they had their own medical kit. And they were detecting these high-risk incidences, but equally significant component of this is, before the project, the doctors, the nurses, the clinicians had no real interaction with these midwives. They had no respect for them, for one thing. They just considered them kind of witch doctors, uneducated witch doctors, and so they never engaged them in the whole process. And afterwards, that linkage was established for the first time, where now these women feel empowered to communicate with the doctors and nurses and clinicians, and they respect, because they're actually telling them, wow, they're giving them the numbers. They're saying, well, this patient is displaying this type of symptomology, this type of blood pressure, this type of glucose in their blood, this type of indicating that they could be developing some problem. So there was a kind of a mutual respect and connection drawn there, and In
Yeah.
those 8 communities, there have been no mortalities since that project has started.
I was
finished.
watching a show. It was a British show called The Midwife.
Oh yeah, yeah. Right.
I don't know if you ever watched that.
I have.
It's
I have.
actually really, really interesting story of a midwife that actually she never wanted to be a midwife. I guess she just wanted to be a nurse. Kind of afraid of blood and guts, and kind of an upper class woman that got sent to a nunnery to learn midwifery.
Okay.
So she was dealing with a class that she wasn't used to. She was learning a new skill that she was a little bit afraid of. And they were doing just as you said. They train each other. They have little kits. They learn how to test the blood sugar in their own way. They didn't have, obviously, a glucometer back then.
Right.
Listening to the fetal heart sounds, examining the mothers, asking them questions, making sure their diet was correct, making sure they had, what they needed in place to receive a newborn.
Right. Right.
All
Parallel
of
to
those
what we're
things.
talking about.
Yeah,
Exactly.
everything that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And this show went through it. It's a very interesting show. I think a lot of people would probably understand a little bit better about how the midwives actually are able to communicate with the doctors, and they would call the doctor to tell them, hey, this patient, I'm finding this and this and this, I think you need to come see this patient. Because those little towns would only have one doctor,
Right.
basically.
Right.
He couldn't
Exactly.
handle a bunch of pregnant patients and know what was going on with them.
Right. Right.
So they had to do what you're doing, what you're setting up for these communities.
And there's a cultural divide there as well. So a doctor going into these communities, trying to do some of this work, there's gonna be some some certain shyness, some certain amount of hesitancy among women to really communicate, and even a communication breakdown in a lot of cases.
Well, the doctors that go into, the interns that actually do part of their internship in the comarcas or with the cunas or with the Nove actually have to get permission from their medicine doctor. If the medicine doctor
Exactly.
agrees for them to come in and form part of their medical team, they'll let them in.
Right.
But they have to get the approval from them first before they're allowed to be sent out there.
Correct.
It's actually really interesting.
Right. Right.
My husband's father did part of his out with the Gunas.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well, we had a few different advantages, I think, in this whole project development, and one of them was early on we were clued in to an organization in the Nove